Hi, and welcome to the Unreal Engine News and Community Spotlight. Our first item today is our NVIDIA Edge program winners from the month of September. As always, you have all submitted some amazing projects, and it's always a challenge to get down to just 3. This month we picked the Armstrong Townhouse, our dynamic grass system, and a project called Wrench. They're all really impressive. If you haven't taken a look at them, please go check out the blog. And if you're interested in winning, let's say an NVIDIA GTX 1080 Ti for yourself, you should also submit for the month of October. We'd really love to see your projects and definitely encourage you to apply. If you'll be in on Robo Recall if that's interesting to you, and we'll also be holding office hours. So if you're in the area and will be attending Oculus Connect, you can find out the information from our blog post about how to connect with us and try to go get your questions answered specifically from a dev one-on-one. So hopefully you find that valuable and can go meet with someone if you have those needs. Also taking place next week, October 11th and 12th, is GitHub Universe. That's in San Francisco. Chance and I'll be up at GitHub, and we'll be demoing Ghost Paint, which is a VR paint on a wall. Check it out, it's pretty sweet. We'll also be demoing our VR mode, and we'll have some AR samples in both ARCore, utilizing ARCore and ARKit. So come say hey if you're in the area, hit us up, and we'll try to say hi. In the last few weeks, we've released a number of previews for 4.18. If you're interested in checking those out, you can head to the launcher and go ahead and download that build. We do recommend holding off on porting your project just yet because that's not quite production ready, but it'll at least give you a taste of what will be coming very soon. And last news item this week is our Epic Mega Jam has been announced. So that'll be taking place November 2nd through 9th. The theme will be announced on the 2nd. We'll do our winners live stream on November 30th. So if you're interested in joining that, there's information about team building and just sort of overall guidelines. It is a little different as far as the submission process than in previous jams. So make sure you give those guidelines a thorough read through and tree and side effects back on board and algorithmic. We'll be announcing some additional sponsors and prizes throughout the month, so stay tuned for that and see what surprises we have in store for you there. Now on to our community spotlight. As always, we do the wonderful folks that are contributing on Answer Hub, so we want to give a huge thanks to them. They're answering questions and just overall helping out our community. That would be Every Nun, Deathray, Noctmare, Juge, Ninjin, Korusu, Shadow River, Curse, Zero, Blin Vlodki, and Kurosu143. Again, thank you all so much for all you do for the community, and we couldn't do this without you. So our first community spotlight for this week is The Immortal Legend. So a team from China has made an animated drama 100% in the engine. And so they already have a couple episodes out. You can go, this is a short glimpse of the trailer they've made. And it's a story about adventure and looking for yourself, and there's a lot of mystery surrounding everything. But they've done, again, all the materials, lighting, rendering, post-processing, it's all done in the engine. So it's really cool to see folks doing this kind of work, and it also looks like they've done a decent amount of motion capture or expression capture right into the engine. So Second spotlight this week is a Beyond Human ArtStation Challenge game environment by Handy Putra. This project just looks so gorgeous and stunning. I love the aesthetic and the mood that they've created in this scene. They've taken it back to this Eastern setting, this beautiful glowing tree, which is really just enthralling, and I can't stop staring at it, but go take a look. Huge shout out to them and great work. And our third spotlight this week is a UE4 Redwood Forest project built by Willie Hams. I saw the previous version of this project I guess a few weeks ago, and it looked great, but they've just bumped it up another notch, and it's really incredible to see how far you've come with this project and just this gorgeous scene that you've been able to set up, or these assets. And they've used a lot of photogrammetry, and it's built in Max, and it's now available on the marketplace. So if you're looking for a gorgeous redwood scene, here it is. So again, huge shout out to all of our community spotlights for this week, and we love seeing you. Thanks for joining us. Hey everyone, welcome to the Unreal Engine live stream. I'm your host, Amanda Bott, and this week I have with me Nick Pinmorton and James Golding, all the way from the UK.
Hello.
Thanks for staying up late to chat with us.
It's not too late. Happy to join you.
Okay. Before we get started on the 4.18 preview, which has lots of interesting goodies and things in for you all, we are doing another game code giveaway. So Lucid Games has really got into beta with their game Switchblade, and we have a quick little trailer for it. But basically it's a MOBA-inspired vehicle action game. So it's 5v5 vehicular shooter where you can kind of hot swap between doing this awesome, like maybe you've got a really fast car and you're chasing down someone else, and as soon as you catch up, you can attack them with your heavy armored vehicle. So it's just a sweet 5v5 game. We're excited for them. Be on the lookout for the little codes that'll pop up across the stream, and be quick to snap. All right, so keep an eye out for those. Congrats on your beta release Switchblade, or Lucid Games. And would you like to get rolling?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that's really cool. So we're going to talk a little bit about the 4.18 release, some of the new features that are coming out, some of the things that we're excited for. So kind of a long list of features, so I guess we'll just jump right in. We're going to start with some of the rendering features. So we've added support for volumetric lightmaps. Basically, this is a replacement for what was the indirect lighting cache. In this case, what we're doing is we're capturing all of the static lighting at various points in the world. It's all adaptive, so we can capture more, a higher density of samples near surfaces, especially surfaces where the indirect lighting is changing. So if you want to switch to some of the screenshots, we have a couple of screenshots to show what this means in practice. Let's see, working on that.
1 sec.
There we go. So this is a screenshot from Paragon. And so this is what the indirect lighting cache would look like now. And with volumetric light maps, we can get that. There we go. So
much better.
Yeah, I'll switch back and forth a little bit. You can see how there's a lot more detail with volumetric light maps because, again, we have a higher density of samples that we can efficiently sample from on the directly on the GPU. So per pixel, we're able to figure out what's the closest set of samples and interpolate between them rather than having to do that work on the CPU and sending only a couple samples over to the GPU. This shows it off much better. So this is a dynamic object set in a static world. You can see how the lighting doesn't really quite match with the old indirect lighting cache. And when we turn on volumetric light maps, we get something that matches up really nicely with the static environment. So we're really happy with this feature from a performance point of view. It's actually quite a bit better in the sense that it offloads a lot of the work from the CPU that was happening with the indirect lighting cache. It does cost a little bit more on the GPU, so depending on the number of pixels on screen that are movable objects, it might cost a little bit more, but it's actually pretty small. On Paragon, we saw an overall, it was pretty much a wash in performance. It was well worth the changes. As part of this, one of the cool things about being to efficiently sample the volumetric light maps on GPU, we're able to now take that information into account with volumetric lighting, so volumetric fog in this case. In this screenshot, we have a static light over that red light over there, and when we're computing volumetric fog, we're able to sample with high quality that lighting and get this really beautiful effect. And here's another example where in this case, what we have is really heavy fog throughout the level, but you can see that the inside is not as fogged. And the reason for that is that we're able to efficiently know that the inside of this cave is shadowed from the light, so we don't get as much scattering and the fog doesn't look as bright indoors. So it's something that I don't have an A/B comparison here, but it's something where if you saw the entire thing fully fogged, you would just look at that and say that's definitely wrong. But with it on, it looks that much better. Let's see. Moving on to some more light mass improvements. We've now added support for directionality when sampling the skylight in Lightmaps. So this gives a huge improvement when you've got a lot of nice color variation or nice gradients in your skylight. In this particular example, this skylight is probably representing something like a nice dramatic sunset. And so you can see that nice gradient of sort of a warm colors at the top going to more cooler colors at the bottom. The old result, the one that looks much flatter and much more desaturated, is the old approximation that we had using spherical harmonics. So this can be a really dramatic improvement for the quality of skylighting. And another interesting result of this, so this is a cube map. This is a cube map taken by one of our lighting artists, Jerome. He's been on the stream before, so some of you might recognize him. And one of our enterprising artists was able to set up a pinhole camera with this. So basically, the whole idea with the pinhole camera is that the smaller that opening is, the sharper the lighting will sort of represent the environment you see through it. So as that hole gets smaller, the cube map actually starts to resolve towards an image. So here you can start to see Jerome sitting there, which is a really cool effect. And another improvement that we've made is supporting multiple bounces of GI with skylights. So in this image number 1 is just a single bounce of GI, and number 2 is enabling multiple bounces. So this will allow you to light a room, like in this case, with primarily just a skylight, and get some really nice lighting.
And was this generated by a community user?
This I honestly don't remember. We've had this. I'm pretty sure we built this one in house, but it was a long time ago. This is that realistic rendering sample. I think we've had in since around 4.0. So let's see.
I think the feature came from a forum user, I think.
Yeah.
Originally.
Oh
So in
yeah.
our notes,
You're
it's,
right. Yes.
Luo
I'm
Shuang?
glad
Luo
you remembered
Shuang?
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So huge shout out to them for implementing this feature and kind of utilizing it and taking a look at it here.
Yeah, so this was actually a really fun story. One of our users on the forum had implemented support for multi-bounce skylights, and we noticed it. We reached out to him and talked to him about it, and he actually ended up coming and doing an internship with us, which was really great. He did some great work while he was here, and he collaborated with Daniel Wright, who was the graphics engineer who ended up adding the support into Lightmaps. So, yeah, huge shout out to him.
Yeah, that's awesome.
All right, so moving on from the first round of rendering features, we have scrolling down my notes. Sorry for that. Getting ahead of myself. Okay, ARKit and ARCore. So I think we have a video.
Yeah.
Yeah. So here's a little video of ARKit, and basically the improvements for 4.18 over 4.17 here. We've worked on unifying the API, making sort of kind of setting up the AR API that we want in the engine. We've made some improvements to the quality of tracking and stuff like that. So it's kind of at the point where we think that ARKit is ready to be sort of used in anger. People should definitely take a look at it, start playing it, and we feel like it's ready to start being used in production code. And we also have added support for ARCore, the ARCore developer preview from Google. So this builds on that sort of common AR API that we defined. And yeah, it's definitely worth checking out. I think compared to ARKit, this one is more of a preview, but we're definitely actively working on supporting ARKit and making it awesome in UE4. Let's see. And up next, we have clothing tools. James, do you want to talk a little bit about clothing tools?
Sure. So, something we've been working on for a little while is being able to author clothing setups right in the engine. So previously, you had to use external tools, namely the Apex plugins for Max and Maya, to set up all your clothing parameters, and then export those out, import them into the engine. You couldn't really do much with them once they're in the engine. This is a problem for a couple of reasons. One was some people didn't have Max and Maya, and the other one was we didn't have control over those tools. There were features we wanted that we couldn't add, and also the round trip was pretty painful. So we've been working, Ben Gallagher, so one of my team, has been working on this for a while. We showed a preview of this at GDC. Well, in 4.18, they're finally out of experimental, and we think they're sort of ready for prime time. What you can see here is one of the characters. This is actually one of the skins from Paragon that we've been setting up in the new tools. You can see at the top there's some pink, and the second one it loops around. There's some pink, which shows those vertices are fixed. And then there are some black verts going down to white. That shows how far the simulation vertex is allowed to move from the animated position. So there's kind of a fall off. Here's another, you can see actually setting that up. So now right in the engine, you can take a mesh, you can then start painting on it, all these different parameters. You can paint how far it can move, you can paint stiffnesses and sort of max distance, those kinds of things. There's a bunch of different tools in there. We refactored the mesh paint that you're used to on static meshes to sort of work on skeletal meshes. But this is great. So now artists can go in, bring in a mesh, do all the setup entirely in the engine, iterate on it until they get just the look that they want. It's much better workflow. So we're excited about that. We're going to be continuing to work on it. We've got a bunch more features coming, but at this point, we're we feel like we've got a really good starting point for being able to set this stuff up. So we're really excited to move this out of experimental and start really using it. People can use this for production. We've also got, we've got features like if you create LODs, it'll automatically propagate the properties that you paint on the high LOD down to the low LODs, stuff like that. You can use for collision, you use our normal physics asset editor. We'll talk about more about that in a minute. But you basically set up shapes like you normally would for rigid body stuff, and that's used for the cloth colliding against the character. So you can do the whole thing all in engine and edit everything right in engine. So that's pretty cool. You can still import from Apex if you want to, and it converts it into our clothing format. We'll keep that around for at least a few more versions to support people who are already using those plugins. So yeah.
Yeah, I do think that's really cool that having all of those tools right in the engine, so people can edit it on the fly, work with all the same tools they're used to working with in the editor, and not have to worry about going back and forth between DCC tools. I think it's going to be really great.
And we've got now we've sort of got this basis, but there's a lot of things that we're working with our technical animators on, new features that they want. It was impossible for us to add before, and I'm sure we'll talk more about those in the future. But we've got some cool plans for clothing. It's just going to get better. We're jumping ahead a little bit. Hold on. So.
Well, if there are things you want to touch on, please don't
Yeah.
worry about it.
No, I don't know
I might
what
have those in the wrong order, so, or we might not even have.
No, we could talk about that one.
Yeah, sure. Let's go for it.
I think this one. Go hit play and let me check. This is testing what I think is testing. Right. So one of the things we've improved, we released it in the previous version, but we had this rigid body animation node. So this runs a full physics asset that you'd set up in the editor, but inside the animation blueprint. And this is super useful because you can run it as part of the animation system. It's very efficient. It's very lightweight, and you can run animation before and after it. So we've been rolling this out to some of our Paragon characters. The one you see here is the first one that we've been sort of using it for those long sort of chains, sort of pipes attached to their head. This would have been impossible to do with the old Anim Dynamics node, which we've used for a while, because that doesn't support really good collision with the character. Whereas you can see here, those bits are flapping around and colliding with the character. So we've had this out for a little while, but we've done a bunch of improvements to it. It's much more stable. There's a lot more fine control over things. So that's one of the great things about working with our game teams closely, is that they break our stuff and we have to find ways to fix it. So there's been a bunch of improvements on that feature in this release.
And I think I found the screenshot we were looking for. So.
Okay, so one of the other big changes in 4.18 is a complete overhaul of our physics asset editor. In the previous version, and for a while in Unreal Engine 4, this has been the tool used to set up this tool called FAT. It was a tool used to set up the physics on articulated characters. That tool has been very long in the tooth. I think I worked on that tool, I don't know, 2004 or something, way back at the beginning of UE3, and it stayed pretty much in that form for a very, very long time. So finally, Tom Sarkin and my team has been working for a while on overhauling the whole thing, and we've got a much better version in 4.18. We've had it in testing for a while. There's too many things to talk about in terms of changes, but there's a lot of big improvements. There's some nice things like down in the bottom left there, you can select a body or select a constraint and see all the relationships that are going on there. So there's one body there with two constraints and what are two joints and what's jointed to them. The tree view on the left shows not just the bones, but it also shows the collision shapes and the joints. The UI, like on the right, where we've got limits, has been overhauled. Profiles have been overhauled. It's using all the same sort of UI elements that our other animation tools use. So the animation viewer and skeletal mesh viewer and all those things. So now it's much more common with all those pieces. The same controls work. You can record directly from physics simulation into an animation using the control, transport controls at the bottom. So it feels much more modern. Our internal devs and artists who've been using it are very happy. So we're happy to get that out, and that's definitely a long in the tooth tool that got a much needed overhaul. So there's a lot of nice benefits from that. I think people will, if they're used to using the tool, they'll enjoy it.
And I think next up we were going to talk about the global find in blueprints. Maybe that's one you want to talk about as well, James?
Sure, that's fine. So for a long time, if you wanted to, do we have a screenshot of that? Maybe we don't.
Not really. Good.
That's fine. I can talk about it.
Things.
Yeah.
So it's for a long time, if you wanted to find, say, a particular event across all blueprints, you could do it, but you had to open a blueprint first and then search for it, and then there was a checkbox that said whether or not it should search just this blueprint or all blueprints. It was kind of a cumbersome workflow. It was sort of weird to open, any blueprint in order to get to that sort of global search. Where now in the main top-level menu of the editor, you can now pull down, choose Find in Blueprints. There's up to 4 global Find in Blueprint windows that you can now dock next to your content browser or any of those kind of top-level tabs that you might use in the editor. And so it's very easy to search for, if you're trying to find where a particular asset is used in all blueprints, a particular event, a particular function is called in all your blueprints, you can now do that at a top level, which is a much more sensible place for it. And you can pin those results as well, and it'll create new tabs when you do new searches. So I think, we obviously use blueprints an awful lot internally, and, we're excited to, our devs were pretty happy when this was shown internally. So I think it's just one of those quality of life things that is born of our experience.
Cool. I think we can probably switch away from screenshots for a little bit. I think we have a bunch of other features to talk about. So Media Framework has gotten a big overhaul in 418. We've been working on this for a long time now. Back when we did the human race demo for last GDC, it really became apparent that real-time video is a very complicated subject, and in order to support it for all the use cases that that people want to use in the engine, especially those outside of games, we really decided that we needed to take a step back and rework the APIs and really support those use cases well. So some of these advanced use cases like real-time video compositing, time synchronization between movie clips and the engine, between movie clips, different movie clips, between movie clips and various audio clips, supporting capture hardware and video over IP, online media streaming, and other than that, we've been working on improved stability and performance of the new framework. So this has been a large project that has been undertaken by Max Preussner here, and yeah, we're finally ready to put it out there. It's he's done a lot of work to make sure that this works across platforms, and we've been vetting it with our own internal uses. So it's there, and give it a try. Give us some feedback on how it's working for you, and any bugs you see with it, or any feature requests, that sort of thing. There are a couple of breaking changes with it just to be aware of, so make sure to check the release notes, and if you were using the previous iteration of Media Framework, you might have to update some of your assets to work with the new version of Media Framework.
And one other thing I think to mention in that is that we also output the audio from the new Media Framework through the audio system. It was kind of a side channel before, and now it actually uses this synth component. So music, audio coming in from video, you can do all the same things with that you might have been able to do with audio before. So yeah, there's all kinds of benefits to the new architecture.
Yeah. Yep, it's a great point. And speaking of audio, James, you want to talk about some of the improvements that we've been making with our own in-house mixer?
Sure. So as people are probably aware, if you're interested in audio, we've been working on our own Unreal audio engine for a while now. We talked about it a bit at GDC this year, and we've been continuing to make good progress there. We've added some more platforms. So we previously had Mac, Windows, iOS, Android, Xbox One, PS4 as sort of experimental. Just to be clear, the new audio engine is still in 418 in early access, but we're continuing to sort of grow the feature set and sort of maturity of that. We're adding Switch and HTML5 support in 418. HTML5 is done via SDL2, and so that's great to have some more platforms if people want to start testing that and giving us feedback. That would be great. There's a bunch of other stuff that's come along. So as part of that audio engine work, we've added a really cool new feature called source buses. And the way that source buses work is that they sort of become, they allow multiple sources to go through one part of the pipeline. So you could have multiple sounds that all get routed to one source bus, and then that source bus you can apply effects to, but you can then treat that as a single source and pipe it through other things. You can even pipe it back into itself if you're doing crazy audio architectures. But it's a super powerful feature. So rather than just applying effects to sources or applying them to listeners, you can now apply them to this point in the middle. So you could take all the audio in a particular room, apply one effect to all of it, and then mix it in with the rest of the stuff. So it's sort of the one big piece of the audio architecture that Aaron, our audio lead, is very excited about getting in there for people to play with. A bunch of other stuff too. We've really improved the way that audio plugins can work. We've been working with a lot of different partners who are very interested in working with us, working with the new audio system to provide new spatialization and reverb technology. We showed some of that with Valve's audio system at GDC. So we've been trying to support them, make those things more flexible. They've got it's easier for them to expose settings and those kinds of things. So there's some really nice improvements there for some of these new experimental audio spatialization things. It's technology we're super excited about. It can sound absolutely amazing when you hear the difference between sort of convention on some of these new techniques, and so we're going to continue to support those efforts. We've also got some new effects we've added in. So let me just check I've got the list right. So we've got a simple multi-channel delay we've added. There's a multi-tap delay, and there's a new lightweight reverb that we've added. We're calling FlexiVerb. And so this is targeted towards maybe mobile or something, which we didn't really have support for reverb and sophisticated things like that. But now you can actually do those sorts of sophisticated DSP type effects on mobile devices, which is really exciting. So yeah, we're going to continue to work on the new audio engine. We've got these features coming along, and we're going to continue to test it on all different platforms. I think we're almost there with all the platforms, and we're going to be starting to do some really heavyweight testing in the coming months to sort of get that ready for proper release. So yeah, lots of hard work there, but it's been really exciting.
Yeah, I'm also really excited about I like the plugin architecture. I like that other people are playing around with integrating new features into the engine. It's I think it's really a huge step forward for audio in UE4, and that's really exciting. So
yeah, it's definitely puts us in a different position, and I think it's a great way to work with people, and we're getting interest from all over the place, from academia and other places where they see the engine as an interesting place to start experimenting with audio. So yeah, very, very exciting times on the audio front.
Let's see. Next on my list, I see Apex Destruction moved to a plugin.
Sure. So that was Apex Destruction is another feature we've had in for a long time. It's something that's sort of in maintenance mode at the moment. What we've decided to do is move it to a plugin, though. And the nice thing about that is it means that if you're not using this feature in your game, you don't pay the cost of loading it, of having those structures. So it's now a plugin. You can turn it off, and the engine works just fine. And we're trying to do this with more and more features going forwards. Is taking things that rather than having this one monolithic engine, we're trying to take pieces that people may not want, may not use in their games, and don't want to sort of pay the cost to distribute, and making those optional plugins. So it's been a bit of work, but we've been slowly chipping away bits of the engine, and that's one of those pieces now that you can opt out of if you're not using it. So,
yeah, definitely something that in the future, I think we'd like to try to do that with more and more of our features. Try to build them in a more modular way. So
yeah, certainly going forwards, I think any feature we're adding at the moment tends to be plugins, but it's a matter of going back and tackling some of the ones that are already there, which is as most software engineers know, it can be a little bit challenging. But it was nice to slowly make headway on this stuff.
Yeah, let's see.
One other little thing. We added one small feature as part of the sort of physics asset tool stuff we mentioned earlier. One thing I meant to mention is you can now create multiple convex hulls for a body. It used to be that you could just select a bone, just create one convex shape around the whole thing. Now you can create multiple. That's just a small nice feature.
And I think if we go back over, we have a video of some new Blendspace Editor features. If you want to talk about those, James.
Yeah, this is a tool that we use a lot, these blend spaces, and we did some polish a year or so ago. We got some good feedback from our animators that it wasn't super intuitive about how to preview, and they couldn't get the list of things that they wanted and so forth. So yeah, so we basically added some nice features there where it's now just dead easy to drag the mouse around and preview without having to place points or accidentally get confused. You can just drag and drop points on and then preview really easily. So hopefully people will find that a bit more intuitive and fun to use.
Cool. Okay, we're gonna switch back to the video now, and let's see. One other thing we've added support for. We added support for Visual Studio Code on Windows, Mac, and Linux. So this is, I think, especially good for people who like Visual Studio, or they kind of like that workflow. But if you're working on a Mac, if you're working on Linux, or you just want kind of a lighter weight IDE than the full version of Visual Studio, this is a nice option. So yeah, you can generate project files for Visual Studio Code and work entirely within it across platforms. Let's see. We have improvements to cross-level actor references using soft object references. Let's see, James, you might have a bit more to talk about this, but
I can try. I mean, we've renamed a few things. So we had a couple of things before. We had F string asset reference, which was basically a soft path that wouldn't automatically be loaded. You had to invoke the load. So those have been renamed to F soft object path. And then we had T asset pointer, which has now been changed to T soft object pointer. So one is a pointer that can get properly loaded. One is a string reference that can get properly loaded. So we renamed those to make it a bit clearer what they're to be used for. And we've also tried to make it easier that when you want to build systems that reference actors across levels, which is pretty common when you're building scenes with lots of streaming levels, and you want to be able to build logic that links them together without having to do a whole bunch of contorted finding things or typing in names and stuff. We now have much better reference for actual cross-level references that will get fixed up automatically when the level gets streamed in, and set to null again when the level gets streamed out. So that should hopefully help, be a hugely helpful building block for people building levels or worlds with lots of streaming levels where you're trying to have cross-level logic going on. So yeah, it's a really nice cleanup on that stuff.
Yeah, and hopefully a nice sort of cleanup for using soft object pointers in general. It's a good way to make sure that you don't have a lot of hard references sort of spiderwebbing throughout your game content, so that when you start your game, you end up loading literally all of your game just by opening it, because you've got a couple blueprints that are all referencing everything.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those things where, we talk to a lot of developers, and this is something that has come up, from those conversations is, they get late on in development and find that everything's loaded all the time. And so we're trying to do a better job of surfacing the features that we have to let developers figure out exactly how they want to load sets of content within their games. So we'll be working on this and working on the content and working on the documentation to go along with it to help people make smart decisions about how stuff gets loaded.
All right, going to switch gears and talk a little bit about some of the mobile improvements that are coming. So on Android, we're switching to Gradle by default. So this is finally starting to switch away from Ant and switching over to Gradle, which has kind of been the preferred build environment on Android for quite some time. Should make it a lot smoother when working with Android. Also, support for the Android camera via plugin. So this is something, it kind of actually hooks up with part of the new media framework. As part of the new media framework, we have this concept called an external texture. So in your material, you can change a sampler to say it's referencing an external texture, and then you can reference a media texture from that. And what this allows us to do here is we can you can sample the camera texture directly from the resource that the operating system is creating, rather than us having to take that and do a couple of memory copies to get it from sort of operating system memory space over to our memory space where we would normally sample it as a usual texture. So helps performance a lot, and enables you to really quickly get access to the front and rear cameras on Android. Some updates on our experimental support for HTML5. WebAssembly is now the default, so moving away from ASM.js and just planning on supporting WebAssembly going forward is kind of the new standard for taking running sort of high performance code in browsers. So yeah, we've enabled that by default. On the iOS side, iOS 11 support, of course, is coming in 4.18 along with Xcode 9 support. Been doing some work to try to make deployment from PC a little bit easier, especially dealing with iOS certificates and code signing and stuff like that. We've got some more work that we're planning to do there to hopefully make that easier from Mac as well. So that's an area that of continued development for us. On iOS, we're also going to enable experimental support for the desktop forward renderer. So this is, I say desktop forward renderer, we've also called it the VR forward renderer. This is the renderer that we had built for Robo Recall. It's a full forward shading renderer. It supports the full material model, supports all of the shadowing options, the variety of shadowing options that we support in the VR forward renderer. And this is all running on iOS. So this was kind of cool. We kind of we were talking about what can we do to bring even higher end rendering features from desktop to mobile, and further try to unify how you build content for desktop and mobile. And the latest iOS devices are quite powerful, and we're able to run some of these features at frame rate. In fact, at WWDC, when we showed the ARKit demo along with our friends at Wingnut, we were actually using the desktop forward renderer. So it was using all of those rendering features. So it's pretty exciting. It's still very early days. Give it a shot. I would not recommend you go and try and ship a game on it right now, but definitely check it out, and I think it's a glimpse of where rendering will be going on mobile devices in the years to come, which is really exciting. On the Mac OS side, we are obviously going to support Mac OS 10.13, which is coming down the line, and we're going to drop support for Mac OS 10.11. So this is kind of keeping up to date with our model, supporting the current and most recent Mac OS releases, and dropping support for older releases. Basically, if Apple's not going to support the operating system any longer, then we're for the time being anyway planning on dropping support for it as well. Let's see. What's next? Sequencer. So I think we have a couple of sequencer videos we can show. If you want to switch over, there we go. So really just a couple of nice UI improvements, and workflow improvements. So let's see.
This is slip editing, right?
Yes, it is.
Do
Do you want to talk a little bit about that, James?
Yeah, what that means, Stacey?
I know a little bit. So, I mean, I think the general idea is that, it lets you sort of slide content around whilst keeping your sort of cursor set in one place. And so it makes it really easy to sort of line up where you want clips to happen at a particular point. So works for, I think, audio, scale animation, and shot tracks as well.
Ah, yeah. That is really nice.
So you can see them scrubbing on the actual animation track down below, keeping the timeline fixed. So yeah, lots of nice polish.
Yeah, it's
there.
a really nice workflow feature.
There's a few other things on the sequencer side, I think, just checking the list.
Yeah.
So I think there's improvements on the. Do you want me to run through?
Yeah,
those
go for
quickly,
it. You got it.
So there's a couple of things on the FBX side, I think. So the FBX importer now will do things like add cinematic cameras if you don't have one, and option to force the front x-axis, stuff like that. I think that they've tried to make the keyframe and trajectory drawing more efficient. Keys are now shown with a red border where they overlap. I think they've added some more drag and drop support. Which one's that one?
Yeah,
I think that's what that's showing.
Found it.
Yeah, so you can drag onto shot tracks, onto subscene camera tracks, and onto the sequence recorder as well. So lots of really nice sort of workflow improvements there. It's just becoming a really mature, polished tool with a lot of these things that can just really save a lot of time. I think there's a bunch of other stuff. Oh, this is the Cine camera. So you can have the camera look at a target, but you can also then keyframe the roll while it's looking. So I think that's a pretty familiar way of working, where there's an allow roll click box. So once you turn that on, then you can get those nice Dutch angles for your cinematic. So yeah.
Yeah.
So continual development there. It's turning into a really nice tool.
Yeah, absolutely. Moving on, one other thing that we've improved with 4.18 is XGE support for shader compilation. So basically, we've done some work to try to reduce the lag between stalling and latency seen in the old system. So before we kind of have to batch up everything and give XGE one big job. And these changes allow us to do the work a bit more incrementally, stop in the middle. If we need to cancel some work and kick off some new work, that's the kind of stuff we can support. So these are the changes that we were looking to make before we try to enable XGE shader compiler support by default. We've been using it a lot in our remote studios and have had a great success with it, and looking to turn it on at headquarters soon. So those of you at working for studios where you've got a number of computers where you can take advantage of XGE, this is a huge workflow improvement especially when you're making big shader changes. Another feature that we're adding is in-editor localization preview. So it's just kind of a nice workflow improvement where in the editor you can just change the language and see in UMG, for instance, exactly what your UI is going to look like. So especially helpful with stuff like right to left languages, or being able to see languages with much longer words for certain buttons than English, to make sure that your UI is going to look nice and polished across different languages. Let's see, and that's actually the whole list of major features that we have to talk about. Let's see,
Is that
James.
all, Nick? What have we been doing?
I know there's only a handful in this release, huh? No, we've been. Is that all? That's right. Yeah. So I don't know. Do we want to open it up to questions now?
Yeah, if you're
That'd
up
be-
for it. Okay.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So we've compiled a large list here. Let's
Nice.
see. Some folks maybe know or don't. Which of the features are already currently being used in Fortnite and Paragon?
Oh gosh.
Do you know?
So
Because a lot of these stem from.
yeah,
direction, right?
some of these we will have actually done for our games, or even in game branches before moving them back. Volumetric Lightmaps will be in Paragon, but I don't believe we've shipped a build with it in yet. James, what about some of the animation features? Certainly the rigid body node is
Yeah, that was done there, and we moved those improvements back. The other ones I think are just hitting around about now. I think in the next couple of weeks they've been testing. The way we often work internally is we'll volunteer someone on the game side to come and test the feature before we roll it out, and that is a great feedback process. But I think the clothing tools and the physics editing tools are hitting them very soon. But they have been testing them, so I don't think there'll be too many surprises there. But I think we'll start to see the first heroes and Paragon set up with the new clothing tools in the next few months, how long it takes to work those through. So not quite in yet, but really close.
Yeah, and of course, we're really just talking about the features here. We've also done a lot of optimization work, a lot of bug fixing, a lot of various other improvements to the engine in order to help games ship or stuff like that. Especially, we recently had a big push to get Fortnite Battle Royale out, which presented some unique challenges with the size of the level and the number of players. Having to support 100 players all running on one dedicated server was quite a challenge. So we had a number of optimizations there that actually many of those are in 4.18. I think there are a couple that will be in 4.19 instead, but most of them actually landed for 4.18.
You have a very nice blog post on the topic, Nick.
I do, since you're happy to promote it. Yeah. So yeah, if you'd like more details on some of the Battle Royale optimizations in particular, check out our blog. I sort of compiled a list of changes from all the hard work that our engine team put into it, and posted a blog about the work that we've been doing.
Let's see. Awesome. Someone's wondering, do you know if the clothing tool will support painting last and nearest values in any of our subsequent releases?
We are working on something to do that effect. We know that that's a feature that we don't have right now, and we're figuring out the best workflow for that. But that's something that's under active development. So hopefully we'll be able to offer something to do that, and hopefully even better than the previous workflow.
Oh, and real quick, is your blog isn't on our website, is it? Or is it?
It is. It's on Unreal Engine.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. So for the folks asking, it's unrealengine.com/blog or whatever, and you'll get there. But
Yep.
let's see. So many questions. They're curious if there's anything planned to improve, Git integration into the engine or things like that.
In terms of source control integration, similar to Perforce source control integration, no. At this time, we don't have any plans to add sort of a similar feature set for GitHub just yet.
In regards to the skylight, is the directionality dynamic?
No. So this is all in Lightmaps, so it's all pre-baked. In the images that I showed where you get that really nice gradient, that's using a static skylight, so that's telling Lightmaps that the sky isn't going to change, so it can just fully bake that lighting in. for if it were, say, a stationary skylight where we expect that the contents of the cube map can change, then instead what we do is we bake out bent normal occlusion. So you'll get occlusion, and we'll kind of look up into the cube map dynamically at runtime. But in that case, you won't. Yeah.
Cool. And so they're asking about the volumetric light maps, and those are enabled by default, correct?
They are enabled by default. That's right.
And then let's see. Someone was commenting that they didn't see a screen percentage editor option available in Preview 3. Are we removing that, or does that just happen to be a bug, or are we intentionally?
I think we'd probably have to look into that. I know we wanted to, like right now there's screen percentage and then there's editor screen percentage, and we were going to unify them so there's just one screen percentage. But maybe when that happened, the UI control was taken away. So yeah, we'll have to follow up on that and see if that was intentional or a bug.
All right. We'll have to make a note.
Yep.
Let's see. They were curious, how is the...
File a dynamic.
Let's see. How is the clipping handled with the cloth editor?
James.
Or is that...
Clipping handled? I'm not quite sure what that means. I guess maybe we need to...
Yeah, I guess
Are there a lot of issues with it? Or is it actually pretty...
So are they wondering clipping, like the collision of having
So
cloth
maybe
clipping into...
Well, I think most of that is down to setting up the collision stuff well. I mean, normally the contact resolution is position based, which basically just means anytime the clothing penetrates one of those capsules that you put on the character, it'll be pushed outside. So as long as the collision stuff is set up right, you shouldn't have too many problems with that. But certainly, fast moving cloth, it can take a bit of iteration. But that's one of the things that's nice about doing it in Engine is you can adjust it a bit, adjust your collision, jump straight in and play the game. And if you start seeing problems, you just hit stop, adjust it a bit, jump back in again. So yeah, it's I don't think there's a magic bullet there, but hopefully this will make it easier to solve those problems. But yeah, it's all about just setting up the collision shapes right, and we'll continue to improve. We've got already some ideas of how to do that better in future versions as well.
Awesome. Let's see. They're asking, we may not know here, but do we know about audio input recording in like iOS utilizing ARKit? So like if you're interacting with a bot in AR.
Audio input recording. No, I'm not sure.
Okay.
Not sure if we support that or not.
It's a really
That's a good question. I don't know either.
Yeah.
Now we've got the camera input. It seems like it would, I don't know. We'd have to follow up.
Yeah, we'd have to follow up on that one.
Good question. Post it if we don't answer it. You can always post it in the forums, and I'll try to point people here to try and answer some of the ones that we may not be able to answer for you. We'll take a couple more. Let's see. Sorry, there's so many. Are there plans to use Vulkan in development, or is that?
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, we're actively working on Vulkan actually, both on desktop and on Android. So on Android, the focus is a bit more on sort of high-end feature set. On desktop, we're actively improving Vulkan. I think at the moment, we have it roughly functionally equivalent with DirectX 12 and DirectX 11. So feature set wise, it's working quite nicely. We have a lot of optimization to go. I think it's something like 25 or 50% the performance that we're getting out of DirectX 12. So we've kind of stood it up from a capability point of view, and now we need to go do a lot of optimization to be able to match what the other backends are capable of. So, for instance, we're not doing multi-threaded commandless submission yet. So we're sort of serializing that on the RHI thread in the background rather than being able to do that on multiple threads. There are a couple of other inefficiencies with like uploading dynamic vertex data and stuff like that, where we just need to make sure we're using the API efficiently. So yeah, we've got a lot more work to go, but we're actively pounding away on it.
All right. And I'm going to do one last question because we're running out of time. Do we have additional plans for downsizing or decreasing the size of files in terms of DLLs or big data files for like mobile targets?
Oh yeah, so that's a really good question. So yeah, we've actually been working on a mobile game ourselves internally called Battle Breakers, and that's been a really great use case for us to take a look at how we take a mobile game and get it to the point where we have a small enough download size that we can get players in, we can get them up and running with tutorial and onboarding while we download more of the content in the background. So that's been a really great proving ground for us on mobile. So some of those improvements have really just been how we built the game. When it comes to the base engine, we've been working on easier methods for being able to take default engine resources that are really large. These are usually cube maps or textures or materials, stuff like that, and being able to point them to smaller resources. So, taking some 16 megabyte default texture and instead we'll point to a 1x1 white texture when we ship on mobile. So right now you can get some of those improvements by going and hacking configuration files. What we're going to do in 4.18 and 4.19, especially 4.19, is try to productize those into more of a being able to quickly say, just don't basically optimize my build for size rather than optimizing for always having high quality defaults. So that'll be coming along. In terms of reducing executable size, we made some improvements through the past couple of releases, 4.16 and 4.17. I don't think we've made any more improvements there for 4.18. So we kind of hit some low-hanging fruit at this point where step one, trying to make sure we don't grow the executable too much as we add new code, sort of as we were talking about trying to add more modular features. So I think that's more of a long-term goal, but we tried to hit the big ticket items pretty recently on Battle Breakers. I think we got executable size down by gosh, I don't want to quote a number because it's going to be wrong, but we cut out a surprising amount of the executable on both iOS and Android recently. But I think most of those improvements shipped in 4.17 at the latest.
Okay, awesome. Do you have any last things you'd like to add? Either James or Nick?
No,
nothing I can think of.
All right. Well, thank you both so much again for joining.
Yeah.
There's always a lot of information that we get from these streams, and hopefully
and thanks everybody for watching. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, no, great questions, and like I said, we'll follow up on the forums and stuff if there's anything we couldn't answer live.
Yeah, so definitely jump into that forum post, ask your questions. We'll try to point folks towards it. As always, follow us on Twitch, Twitter, Facebook, all the social media things. I dropped a survey link in, so let us know how we're doing, what topics you'd like to see in the future, and we will catch you next week. Thanks so much for joining. Bye.
Bye.